So they're hounding the ICE agents the whole time. They're spitting on them. And then after the woman is shot while driving directly at an ICE officer, some guy shouts, "Dude, you did a murder."
All right, buckle up, buttercups, because we're diving headfirst into a conservative fever dream today. This clip promises treason accusations and war on feds. And let me tell you, the right-wing outrage machine is working overtime to turn a tragic incident into a full-blown declaration of ideological warfare. We're going to hit pause on some truly wild takes and unpack the sheer audacity of these arguments. Let's get into it.
Yes, dude, you did a murder. That's how these imbeciles speak. We're now trending very clearly towards a particularly brutal war that seemed unthinkable until recently. It's increasingly evident that millions of people living in this country are so committed to an explicitly anti-American post-national ideology that they cannot be reasoned with. Video evidence means nothing to them. They're not interested in logic or laws or decency.
Whoa, hold on. Did we just go from a specific tragic shooting incident to millions of people having an explicitly anti-American post-national ideology in like 3 seconds flat? That's some Olympic level mental gymnastics right there. It's like watching a kid drop their ice cream and immediately declare all ice cream evil and un-American. The leap from a single event to a sweeping generalization about Americans who cannot, I can't even get this, who cannot even reason without some logical fallacy. It's a fundamental pillar of fear-mongering. This is the classic playbook, folks. Take an isolated incident, blow it up, then use it as some way to demonize everyone who dares to question the status quo or, I don't know, just exist outside their narrow worldview. They're not interested in logic or laws or decency. Pot, meet kettle, my friend, because what's less logical or decent than immediately writing off a significant portion of the population is it's crazy because enemies of the state don't do this. It's a convenient way to avoid actual debate. They're essentially saying if you don't agree with our interpretation of events, you're not just wrong, you're fundamentally flawed, un-American, and beyond redemption. That kind of rhetoric doesn't build bridges. It torches it. It burns it to the ground. It's designed to create an us versus them scenario where us is the only logical, decent, and patriotic side, and any dissent, any protest, any questioning of authority is immediately branded as an attack on the very fabric of our nation. This is completely ridiculous, and it doesn't make sense.
And in some cases, they don't even care about self-preservation. Their primary belief system revolves around a mixture of nihilism, irony, ghoulishness, and intense jealousy and insecurity. And these millions of people are well represented in government. They're represented by politicians who are now openly threatening that they will start a new civil war over the fact that the Trump administration is enforcing immigration laws that were passed in a free and open democratic fashion. And those politicians include Tim Walz, who's obviously eager to distract from his involvement in a generational scheme to defraud taxpayers out of hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, in a moment, we'll get into the specifics of the shooting involving the ICE officer and the professional agitator who tried to run him over. We will demonstrate beyond any doubt whatsoever that the ICE officer was fully justified in shooting and killing this woman. But it's important at the outset to reject the framing that the left and much of the corporate press is attempting to establish here. So let me say it outright. Even if all of their lies were true, which they aren't, even if an ICE officer had somehow decided one day, for no reason, to brutally murder somebody on camera, there would still be no justifiable reason whatsoever for politicians to talk the way they're talking now in the Democrat Party, from Minnesota to Washington. There would be no justifiable reason to foment an insurrection against the United States of America in response to something like that. There'd be no reason for a politician like Tim Walz to imply that his state is now at war with the federal government and to suggest, as he did yesterday, that the National Guard might be ordered to defy or even attack officers of the federal government. Watch.
Look, I don't know. I don't think any governor in history has had to fight a war against the federal government every single day. Well, I said this yesterday. We've never been at war with our federal government. Order to prepare the Minnesota National Guard. We have soldiers in training and prepared to be deployed if necessary. I remind you, a warning order is a heads up for folks. And these National Guard troops are our National Guard troops. They're teachers in your community. They're business owners. They're construction professionals. They are Minnesotans. Minnesota will not allow our community to be used as a prop in a national political fight. We will not take the bait. We will continue to update you, Minnesota, as we get more information.
Yeah, by the way, just a quick historical note. He said that no governor in history has fought a war against the federal government. What? The Civil War? Have you heard of that? That happened. And it seems like he wants another one now. So what does it take for the DOJ to haul this guy away in handcuffs? You know, this is the most crooked, corrupt, one of the most crooked and corrupt public officials we've seen in modern American history. I mean, fresh off of scamming the taxpayer, he's now declaring war against the United States government. He should not be a free man at this point. Okay, he should be frog-marched in shackles in front of cameras. He should be looking at charges for insurrection and treason.
Did I just hear frog march in shackles and treason for a governor talking about his state's National Guard? Seriously? This is the kind of over-the-top nonsense that makes you wonder if these folks get paid by the Outrage unit. 1 minute, they're railing against the federal government's outreach, and the next, they're demanding the governor be hauled off to federal prison for just talking? Let's be real. The call for insurrection and treason charges is not about justice. It's about political theater. It's about trying to silence and intimidate anyone who pushes back against their preferred narrative. The irony is thicker than a Republican's bank account after a tax cut. They'll decry cancel culture when it comes to their own problematic statements, but when a progressive politician speaks, suddenly it's time to kill. And let's not gloss over the historical amnesia. No governor in history has had to fight a war against the federal government. Oh, hello? American Civil War? Anyone? Anyone hear it? Maybe a quick peek at a history book before you start slinging accusations of treason would be a good idea. It's pretty rich to accuse someone of historical illiteracy while just demonstrating it's so spectacular. This isn't about upholding the law. It's about weaponizing it against political opponents. It's the same playbook they used when they cried insurrection only for the January 6 rioters, but then turn around and cheer on politicians who openly threatened defiance against federal authority. The hypocrisy is so glaring, it needs sunglasses. This kind of rhetoric isn't just irresponsible. It's genuinely dangerous. It inflames intentions and normalizing calls for political persecution. It's a chilling echo of authoritarianism, dressed up in a patriotic garb, and we should all be deeply concerned about what they're saying.
There's no need to read between the lines here. The implication is obvious. Tim Walz is deliberately laying the groundwork for a scenario in which the Minnesota National Guard will fire upon ICE officers or vice versa. Will he give the order himself? Probably not. But Tim Walz understands that, in general, when you put the National Guard on the street and order them to undermine ICE in defiance of the Constitution, then the likelihood of a catastrophic incident, a modern Boston Massacre situation, becomes very, very high, and that's what he wants. Very clearly. The strategy Walz is using is very familiar to left-wing terrorists. The entire reason that this lesbian poet was stalking ICE agents yesterday and blocking their vehicles by stopping in the middle of the road was that she wanted a confrontation. She wanted her partner, quote unquote, or whoever it was, to film everything. She was desperately trying to get a reaction out of ICE so that she could present them as fascists and upload the footage all over the internet. And there's no other reason why you would park your car perpendicular in the middle of the road. And that's been their strategy for months now. Usually they stand in front of ICE vehicles and try to block their access to detention facilities. We've seen this all the time. Walz is applying this strategy on a much broader scale. He's being transparently phony about his motivations when he praises the National Guard in that clip. He doesn't mean a word of what he's saying. As Mike Cernovich pointed out during the BLM riots, which Democrats, of course, encouraged and endorsed and facilitated and funded, Walz openly mocked the Minnesota National Guard, saying they're poorly trained and useless. Watch.
The mayor knew what he was asking for. He wanted the National Guard, and what does that mean? I think to the mayor, yes, I think it's a perception. I'm certainly not questioning that. I think the mayor said, I request the National Guard. Phew, I'm out. This is great. We're going to have massively trained troops. No, you're going to have 19-year-olds who are cooks.
Walz's views of the Minnesota National Guard haven't changed, right? What's changed is that in 2026, he's hoping that one of these National Guardsmen, who he says he thinks are not well trained and not reliable, he hopes that one of them will take a shot at an ICE agent or try to run one over or something along those lines. And that would enable Democrats to launch a domestic color revolution on an even greater scale than what we saw in 2020. Now, make no mistake, if an ICE officer had been murdered yesterday, every single one of these people would be celebrating right now, just as they celebrated the assassination of the healthcare CEO, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the multiple assassination attempts on Trump. They're not remotely upset that this person died. They're thrilled about it. They think they can use her death for their own political gain. And they're not going to stop with this one lesbian agitator, who they're now calling a legal observer, to make her sound like a UN monitor in some third world war zone. But she wasn't a legal observer, whatever the hell that is. She was intentionally obstructing ICE, according to eyewitnesses. Watch.
They clearly wanted her out of there because she was the main car leading the protest, is my understanding. I talked to another guy who was driving behind her, but she was very successful in blocking traffic. She was doing what she was set out to do, and so they wanted to get her the hell out of there. Yeah.
So it looked like she was impeding ICE vehicles.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
That was her goal.
So what was actually happening here was, this was not a mom running errands. This was not someone dropping her child off at school. She was trying to stage an illegal blockade of the road to interfere with ICE agents. Okay, and that which is like a serious crime already. I know this comes as a shock to left-wing activists who just do whatever the hell they want all the time, especially blocking traffic. They do this. This is the anti-ICE activists do it. The BLM, climate change. They love doing this. But you're actually not allowed to do that. Not only are you not allowed to do that, that's a serious crime. To just say, I'm going to block the road. I'm going to blockade this road. Doesn't matter if they're federal agents trying to enforce federal laws. There could be an ambulance with someone in a medical emergency. It could be all kinds of things. But you know what? Because I want to, I'm going to block the road. And that's what she decided to do. And they tried to go and detain her for it, which, of course, because you're committing a serious crime. And then she rammed her car into one of them when they attempted to apprehend her. That's what happened. Now, by now, you've probably seen many different angles of the shooting on Wednesday. We'll start with the first clip that everybody saw, which isn't really remarkable because of the shooting, but because of how utterly and completely annoying all of the bystanders are. I mean, Reddit must have been having some kind of convention on the sidewalk during the shooting. That's the only way to explain this. Watch and listen if you can muster.
Get the f*** out of my neighborhood. In car. No car.
What? Dude! What the f***?
us. Dude, you did a murder for what?
So they're hounding the ICE agents the whole time. They're spitting on them. And then after the woman is shot while driving directly at an ICE officer, some guy shouts, "Dude, you did a murder." Yes, dude, you did a murder. That's how these imbeciles speak. Not even capable of sounding like normal people. They've spent so much time online racking up tons of Reddit points. They might as well be speaking a different language at this point. And they're doing all this supposedly to protect foreigners who are breaking our laws and in many cases stealing our money. I mean, they're doing all this specifically in Minnesota to protect Somali scammers. Okay, this woman gave her life in the commission of a crime to protect 68 IQ Somali scammers who, by the way, couldn't give less of a damn about her. You notice when you see all these like protests now and riots and the vigils and everything, you notice how the Somali community is not showing up en masse?
All right, I have to stop this train before it derails completely off the tracks and it's a cesspool of bigotry. This woman gave her life to protect 68 IQ Somali scammers? Let's just unpack the sheer, unadulterated nastiness of this statement. This isn't just an opinion. It is dehumanizing, racist, and xenophobic attack, pure and simple. First, reducing a human being, a woman who died, to a lesbian poet, and then to a pawn in some grand scheme to protect 68 IQ Somali scammers is disgusting. It strips her of her humanity, her motives, her motivations, and her life, all to fit a hateful narrative. It's a classic tactic. Demonize the victim to justify the violence against them, and then demonize the community they supposedly represent. And the casual racism against the Somali community? The implication that they are all scammers and that their intelligence can be quantified and dismissed with a number like 68 IQ is beyond the pale. This isn't just ignorant. It's a deliberate attempt to stir up prejudice and hatred against an entire ethnic group. It's the kind of rhetoric that fuels real-world discrimination and violence. Then, to add insult to injury, the speaker dismisses the entire Somali community's grief or involvement by saying, they don't care. Who are you to speak for an entire community's feelings? This is intellectually dishonest mixed with a heavy dose of bigotry. It's a transparent attempt to divide, to show resentment, and to justify a worldwide view some lives are simply worthless than others. This isn't political commentary. It's just plain bigotry masquerading as tough talk, and it's utterly unacceptable.
You notice how they're not showing up? You know why? Because they don't care. They don't care at all. All of you idiots that are flooding the streets to protect scam artists who are stealing money from you, the Somali community, they're not even going to say thank you. They won't even show up at your candlelight vigil. Guess what? Because they don't care. In any event, very quickly, more videos came out, which made it even more clear that this was self-defense. And this one, shot by someone on the scene and put in slow-mo by Colin Wright, is one of the best ways to visualize what happened. And you can see it here. We'll put it up on the screen. And as Colin points out, quote, the car is in drive and the woman steps on the gas while the wheels are turned to the left. And you can see right there. Yep, there it is. Going right at the guy. Because the ground is frozen, the tires have no traction and they spin in place. Had there been no ice, the car very likely would have head-on struck the officer standing in front of the vehicle. That's Colin Wright's description, which is true. And indeed, from another angle, you can clearly see that the car did in fact strike the officer in a glancing blow that physically moves his body. And we'll show that angle here now. And keep in mind, as you watch this footage, that we're only seeing it because of X. I mean, if it weren't for X, this would be another Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot type of thing. It would be another George Floyd, which it might be. I mean, they're trying to turn it into that. But it'd be yet another case where a mob forms around the body, concocts a false narrative, and burns down entire cities. And to the extent that we may be able to pull back from the brink here, which remains to be seen, It's because the public, if they know where to look, has access to this footage and they can share it without getting banned for spreading Russian disinformation or whatever. Now, to be clear, under the law as well as common sense, law enforcement officers have every right to shoot and kill you if you ignore their orders to stop and drive a 2-ton automobile towards them. You know, when officers don't react with lethal force in this scenario, they often end up like this. Watch.
Turn off the car.
No.
399, fleeing. Get out of the car. Get out of the car. No. 299, she almost struck me. Get out of the car.
Now, just the past year, there have been more than 100 incidents where criminals and vehicles have targeted ICE and Border Patrol agents. A few months ago in Chicago, an ICE officer was dragged under a vehicle. In December, 2 ICE agents were hit by a car. It's becoming a major problem for law enforcement. And this is why if you drive a car towards a police officer, you get shot. And that's nobody's fault but your own. And it's why, in general, it's a bad idea to disobey law enforcement officers. When you disregard the law and behave as if the rules don't apply to you, then you run a very significant risk that one day you will pay a very severe punishment for doing so. Now, you get the sense that for many of these left-wing terrorists, they've never suffered real consequences for their crimes at any point in their lives. And as a result, they're emboldened. They think that because they've run 20 red lights with no issue, therefore there's no harm in running one more red light. Like, that's the kind of mentality, even though what they're doing is a lot worse than running red lights. Eventually, though, they inevitably learn the hard way that indeed, there's very good reason to stop at red lights. And if anything, that's an argument for dramatically scaling up the punishments that these agitators face. Don't let them block another ICE vehicle or spit on another ICE officer.
Phew, that was a wild ride, wasn't it? From baseless accusations of treason to outright racist accusations. This clip truly showcased the depths some will sink in order to push their agenda. It's a stark reminder we need to constantly challenge these narratives and stand up for truth and decency. So tell me, what do you think of these takes? Let me know in the comments below. Hit that like button if you appreciate us calling out this garbage, and subscribe for some more real talk. Stay woke, stay loud, and we'll catch you next video.